We've been really diving in deeper into India film culture, which we knew was always there, but we only knew like a fraction of it was there. But I don't know. There was one thing that was just sticking with me. We've seen, the horror genre from, Japanese cinema. We know the horror genre from Italian cinema. And now we're hearing all this great stuff about India cinema, but I'm like, do they have horror? Like, what's their big horror movies? Because I don't care what anyone says. Horror is subjective to the type of culture that you live in. And sometimes it's not going to translate. Sometimes it will make the jump. Like you'll see the influence of Italian horror, or you'll see all of a sudden these Japanese horror remakes because it was just strictly visuals. But I was curious on what it would be for India horror movies. Do you know of any India horror movies?
I've heard of some on some Netflix recommendations, but I haven't really dived in yet. Like I've got several Indian movies on my queue now. It's just that whole thing. They're long. They run long in general. So I haven't pulled the trigger on another yet. But yeah, you sent me that list from Screen Rant.
Screen Rant. I love Screen Rant. A lot of the stuff.
Screen Rant's the one that's always like drops your mom jokes.
No, that's Screen Crush.
Oh, that's Screen Crush. Okay,
yeah.
Screen Rant's
Ryan Airy. Shout out to him if you need your Easter eggs. Although, heavy spoilers is right up there too. Great stuff. But no, Screen Rant is anytime you see anything that pops up on our Twitter stream that says Quentin Tarantino's list, I usually get it from Screen Rant, or like the things about Lost that you need to know. So ironically, when I went digging around from Screen Rant, I found 10 best Indian horror movies of all time ranked, and they had me at all time. From old school haunted house stories to freaky telenovelas. And I didn't know telenovelas aren't horror. Isn't that the soap operas that my grandmother used to watch?
They have horror elements from time to time. They got ghosts and murders. Yeah, you're
right. That's true. They do have the ghost in there because they had dark shadows type thing. So yeah, you're right.
People get possessed and stuff,
So, okay, yeah, I buy that. I stand corrected. The freaky telenovelas that act out the future, these are the best and scariest Indian horror movies. So you want to go through the list? We can't play any of the trailers. We just don't know which ones are going to bite us. So we're going to skip it.
I don't even think without the audio it's going to fly.
Yeah, it said the horror genre transcends borders and languages, which I don't agree with because it has to have very specific visuals to do that. But
everyone's afraid of dying.
Yeah, right.
Which typically horror movies are about the fear of dying.
Yeah, that's true. So you can get it there. So while America and the UK have created some of the greatest horror movies ever made, India has a strong pedigree of horror titles that can stand toe-to-toe with anything found in the Western canon. And I should put this out there so we don't get buried in the comments. I don't know what sector of India cinema this lives in, so I'm going to leave that part out. But there's 10 of them, and there's some big ones. So number 10 on their list is called Pari, P-A-R-I, and it was in 2018. It's the directorial debut of Pros Roy. It's a fun supernatural horror movie about a strange woman who may not be of this world, containing elements of demonic horror. Pari concerns a satanic cult that sexually assaults and impregnates kidnapped women with the offspring of Islamic mythological demon named Ifrit. So this sounds like it's Rosemary's Baby, plural, that they're basically impregnating these captured women to become the vessel of this demon. So I buy that. That sounds scary.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds interesting.
Now, though, it adds a real life element as far as now what happens to kidnapped and trafficked women. Well, sometimes they get kidnapped by cults and get impregnated and have to carry a demon spawn.
Good point, JJ. Do we get dance numbers in these?
Yeah,
I feel kind of gypped if you didn't get a dance number.
And that's the thing. I don't know how. Again, that's why I didn't want to jump in on what sector of India cinema this falls in. It doesn't have it on there, so I don't even want to guess. But that is considered the number 10 scariest India horror movie of all time. Number 9. Well played, Screen Rant, because the number 9 movie is called 9, and it was made in 2019, which ends with the 9. A fun mix of science fiction and horror, 9 also contains some touching elements regarding father-son relationships. The non-title refers to the number of days that a passing comet will disrupt all forms of modern technology, including electricity and phone service. The movie is well shot and filled with some good visual effects, but the real heart of the story lies in the father-son relationship between Dr. Albert Lewis and an 8-year-old son named Adam. So this falls a little bit more into probably sci-fi, but I like the premise.
What are the horror elements again?
So every 9 days, all forms of modern technology, including electricity and phone service, are dead.
Now that is a scary premise. I think
Because that could really happen.
I think the premise, if you did a horror movie that was just I lost my phone and played it very realistically, that's a horror movie by itself.
Oh, yeah.
I think if Google stops working and folks can't Google anything, that's a horror movie in itself.
Yeah. You said that before, too, and I think you're right.
So if you have all these things happening all at once, again, no tech... can you imagine? Like, I'm really interested to see this movie because I would think people are going to lose their minds.
And, I think if you get into the horror elements of this, is there going to be a sector of the world that when you realize all bets are off as far as power and ways to communicate with each other, do we have the purge? The Lord of the Flies moments of just like, we're going to do all this crap while we can, where there's no one there to stop us. Now you start getting into that very scary element of the human of just like, you say you're a good person, but are you really a good person if you're not a good person when no one's watching? So I feel like it feels very sci-fi, but it definitely it could have horror elements in here. So far we see Rosemary's Baby and we see a little bit of,
well, The Purge. I mean, that's very much The Purge.
The Purge. One of the low-key best endings of all time that was so deep and it kind of blew over everyone because it was a remake was The Day the Earth Stood Still. It was a great movie. And even the remake was decent. But the whole thing of just like you have this robot that you show any signs of aggression and it's just going to kill you. But spoiler alert, the way it ends, do you remember The Day the Earth Stood Still?
No, how does that one end?
Do you want the ending? Because it's a pretty powerful one.
I'll take the spoiler, yeah.
So the ending is they convince the aliens that the people are worth saving. And the aliens are like, all right, we'll let you live this time, but you do have to sacrifice something to prove that you are worth saving. And as the aliens left the planet, all sources of power on the planet died. And that was the end.
Really?
Yeah. So I was just like, now let's see how good of a people you really are when you're going to be inconvenienced to the nth degree.
I'm telling you, if HEB shut down, it would turn into Mad Max times around here.
No, HEB is going to save us. I'm not worried about that.
Let's do this little gimmick and tell folks why they should subscribe.
Oh. Yes, you should like, subscribe, and share because that helps the YouTube algorithm to help get us out to people like yourselves that enjoy some kayfabe content, culture pops, and horror high spots because they too might be movie marks and lucha nerds. So by doing this, it'll really help us along our journey. All right, let's jump back in our... Yeah, JJ said if HEB shuts down, HEB would be the first one on the scene to save the day. Truth. All right, number 8 on the 10 horror movies of all time. India, 1920.
Top 10 Indian horror films.
Top 10 Indian horror films, 1920.
That we are going to watch.
Yes.
And not just read articles about.
Yeah, we're going to have to watch them for sure. 1920, made in 2008. Some of the best period... Oh, it's a period piece. It felt like a period piece. I was like, oh, yes, I recognize that church. That's something that Guillermo del Toro would have used in a movie. Released back in 2008, concerns a married couple who live inside a haunted house. All right. I mean, FX has like 5 different series based on that premise alone, and The House on Haunted Hill. So
This was a franchise starter.
yeah, and it runs an extravagant 140 minutes, which is enough time to squeeze in a lot of great supernatural-based scares and some interesting character dynamics. It was a huge success in native India and spawned a franchise that encompasses 4 movies. Okay, yeah. Put it on the list. We got this list. Thank you, Screen Rant. Oh, here's an interesting one. This has a good look. This one's called number 7, The House Next Door. These are all modern. These are all pretty modern, and that's interesting to me so far because I wanted to see where it was birthed in India, like how far back it goes. The House Next Door, a paranormal horror movie, which mainly effective scares that have the ability to both startle and unsettle. Following Krish and Lakshmi, a brain surgeon and his wife who grow troubled once a rebellious teenager and her stepmother move in next door. That doesn't necessarily have a completely horror element, right? Unless they're, well, although am I thinking supernatural or paranormal versus just like having crappy neighbors?
Well, if your neighbors are ghosts, that can be really detrimental to your home values.
Oh, yeah. I should have read the rest of the paragraph. A series of disturbing paranormal events accost a teenager, resulting in a battle between good and evil as they attempt to rid the house of their spirits. It's a good old-fashioned ghost story, and it's sure to thrill anyone who enjoys paranormal-based horror. So far, I recognize all the premises. Like, they're solid premise. There's nothing that's like, they're not breaking new ground here. Maybe that's why we haven't had that one big crossover yet.
Look, for a shoot, and I'll just say this, and this is a hot take, but I think American horror is really lagging behind the rest of the world. Now, I haven't seen a lot of these Indian horror films, but you watch stuff from Korea, from Japan, from France. There's stuff that they're just taking more risks. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of horror films out here are out for the jump scares only.
Yeah, I agree. I think we definitely we've morphed into a jump scare culture and not like a disturbing topic culture. But we see stuff on Shudder that starts to dance with it. But as far we're talking about like the horror, the mainstream horror that goes there.
For the most part, the major release horror, right?
Yeah.
And you got folks like Blumhouse out there doing interesting stuff. But they also got the jump scare films, which are just there. Have you seen like videos where they remove the soundtrack from the jump scare movie? So it's because it's really the music stab that's making you jump.
Yeah.
And they just
no, I have not seen that.
They just shave the music out, and it's just like nothing happening. You turn and look, and someone is there.
It's just standing there. Well, that's a great idea. But it really does expose like the deep need for some story. Like the jump scare ones are very pluck and chuck tech, right? That you're gonna just go away. It was kind of fun, like an amusement park ride, but it's not going to be the one that you go back and revisit that really like haunts you. I think true horror has to slow down, right? You have the jump scare and you have the scary visuals, but what is it about? Like, wasn't the original Salem's Lot, wasn't that like a made for ABC teleseries before it wasn't even actually a theatrical release?
Well, I don't know. Has there ever been a theatrical Salem's Lot? I remember the show.
No. I think it was just the one that showed on TV. There's going to be they are making the Salem's Lot that comes out this September. But do you remember the scene that I'm talking when they're just like that slow crawl of the vampires crawling to them? Sometimes the horror has to go slow, and it builds that tension. And I feel like sometimes that's missing with the fast jump scares.
But are they even fast though? I just feel like the jump scare gimmick is like it's not something that's happening quickly. It's kind of like drawn out.
Yeah.
But then it's just like a pop. Anyway, I'm just saying.
Yeah, like a pop chop.
My point being overall is just that I think U.S. is sort of like getting.
Yeah.
They're just not at the top of the food chain as far as like horror these days.
No, I agree. All right, number 6, Kathandia, Koth Anodi, another 2015. It's based on Grandmother's Tales, a very popular piece of literature that is enjoyed since its publication in 1911. It's a collection of folklore stories written by an Assamese poet. It would have proved quite difficult to adapt the book given its legendary status, but through some good filmmaking and innovative reimagining of the classic stories, it's an enticing watch. While not a straightforward horror film, it contains some very difficult subject matter that's sure to disturb and unsettle. Exactly what we were just talking about. Sometimes it's just about the content of just having something deep that's really going to stick with you that you're going to want to talk about afterwards and try to deep dive. So far, these are all post 2015, and I want to see if that continues on the list.
All right, let's see.
Number 5 is Ravening, Aamis, another 2019. It debuted at the Tribeca Film Festival, garnering some very strong reviews. All right, so there's one that made the jump. The story follows a content pediatrician who meets a PhD student studying Indian eating habits. The two quickly form a bond and soon begin experimenting with different types of meat. Before long, she develops an obsession with trying human meat. Oh, ho, ho, ho.
This sounds interesting.
I did not see that. It's a grotesque storyline that will satiate even the most critical horror fans, drawing inspiration from the extreme movies of the 80s that were banned for their violence and depraved content matter. I'm in. I didn't hear about this. This debuted at the Tribeca Film Festival.
Yeah, it sounds good. I'm trying to look up where we can watch it.
Yeah. Ravening, but the actual title is Aamis. I don't know how to pronounce it, and I don't want to pretend I do. Aamis. Ravening. Ravening? Ravening. Pretty good. All right.
Let's see.
You find it any streaming anywhere?
Wow, it looks like it's only streaming on some channel called Movie Saints. That's interesting.
Interesting.
It says you can get it with a Sling Premium subscription. I'm going to have to look it up.
Oh, interesting.
I got a Sling.
Yeah, let us
trial.
know in the comments if you're watching this later on in the future. For all the future viewers, let us know where you can watch some of these horror movies, because maybe we talk to the Shudder curator.
I'd really like to see this last one, so that sounds good.
Yeah. All right, here we go. This is what I'm talking about. This one is from 1949, and it's called Mahal. Often credited as Bollywood's first horror movie, Mahal is worth watching simply for its historical importance. Released back in 1949, the movie stars Ashok Kumar as Hari Shankar, a man who experiences visions and bizarre occurrences inside his new abandoned palace. It draws on the themes of reincarnation while presenting a tantalizing mystery that's filled with both scares and tempting questions. The movie was enormously popular in its native India, turning gothic horror into a popular genre and making him a Hindi cinema icon. So this sounds like it was specific to Bollywood, but I was curious. So there is India horror roots that trace all the way back to at least 1949 at the minimum. It's got a cool picture. It definitely be interesting to watch that. Just for, like you said, for the history alone. Maybe we just start doing a film class. But then
we have to watch the films.
Yeah, this is the film class.
And then we can teach about them.
Yes. The problem is we have this content avalanche right now.
It's too much. And then how many times did you go to the movies this week?
Yeah, I know.
I went to the movies 3 times this past week.
Yeah, it is a lot to keep up with. And and it used to be in the summer that you legit had to go twice in a weekend just to catch the movie of the week and then the counter programming, because a lot of times you want to see both. So to be able to catch a flick at home, and I was trying desperately to make one night just movie night. I told you that just to try to keep up, Because even no matter what, you remember the days where you just felt like you saw every movie that came out?
Yeah.
And it's impossible now.
Remember having nothing to rent?
Yeah. It's like, I've seen it all. It's like, you couldn't do that now. Now you spend a time in the list of movies that you haven't seen is so big that you can't keep up.
Plus, you've got all these other forms of content now that they're not even movies or shows, like YouTube.
Yeah, they're competing with.
Even social media kind of competes with that.
It is. Well, because a lot of times if you're watching a movie on your iPad, it's competing with everything on that device, not just the film.
TikTok is also like, it's like watching a show.
Yeah, it's a time gobbler. That's a dangerous time gobbler. Bots. That's right. I said it. All right. The number 3 horror movie of all time in India was in 2003, and it's called Bhoot. It's got a cool shot. That looks good. Taking enormous influence from The Exorcist. It's a worthwhile addition to malevolent. Why can't I say that word?
Malevolent.
Yeah, I can't say it. Demonic possession subgenre, which is its own thing, right? That possession is a subgenre. This one concerns married couple who moved into a haunted apartment and began to experience severe repercussions in the form of Swati's possession. Solid possession-based scares. And, she won a Bollywood Movie Award. Okay, so this was Bollywood as well. All right, worth checking out. What's your favorite possession movie?
I mean, it has to be the one everyone loves.
You go back to the OG?
Repossessed with Leslie Nielsen.
Oh, that song. Repossessed. Jesse the Body Ventura, Mean Gene Okerlund were in that.
Were they?
Yeah.
What was their bit?
They were just basically started calling the possession like they were calling a wrestling match.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, Repossessed. That's funny. That's the one you went to. And I remember the wrestling cameo in it. I really like that one that snuck up on us on Shudder.
Which one was that?
The one we watched it last year about the YouTube guy who did the fake possessions and then he had the real possession that happened to him. Man, it was really good.
Oh, I didn't see that one. You told me about the Cleansing Hour?
The Cleansing Hour. Low key, that was really good. But it really was hard to see. You know what was really a scary addition to the possession fleet of shows? Is go on YouTube and find the 2020 special of a live exorcism, and it was freaky. And because supposedly it had that, I think that was the original My Name is Zach Bagans, because 2020 is like, this is really happening. But possessions, that possessions get everybody. All right, the number 2 is a very long title. 13B, Fear Has a New Address. So somehow the log line actually became the title of the movie, and that was 2009.
No, the title is 13B.
13B. Fear
Has New Address is like the subtitle.
Oh, got it. Okay. It's a fun
like 13B Electric Boogaloo.
Oh. Monkey Shines, an experiment in fear. That's exactly. That's what I always think of. The film looks fantastic despite its obvious lack of money working wonders. It doesn't really say what it's about, but it sounds like the apartment is. It mixes elements of J-horror with a unique storyline, resulting in an original horror movie that's both horrifying and intellectually challenging.
It says right there, he's a man who watches the future of his family through a telenovela playing exclusively on his television. Well, that sounds interesting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is good stuff in here. Shout out Screen Rant. All right. Are you ready for the number 1 of the top 10 Indian horror movies of all time?
Do it.
I was hoping you'd say it because I don't know how to say it. Toombad. 2018. Received its premiere at this. Oh, this was a Venice International Film Festival, making its first Indian movie to show at the festival. It speaks to not only the quality of film, but the emergence of Indian horror as a popular genre of film outside the continent. The story concerns the residents of Toombad who go against the orders of the goddess of prosperity and suffering a devastating curse. It's a great Indian film with its roots in the country's tradition that shows off some truly exceptional cinematography and bone-chilling scares and it's one of the country's greatest horror exports. So there it is. That is the top 10. I was just very curious of the horror movies from different countries like that, because like I said, we've seen J horror, we're familiar with Italian. I just was not familiar with any Indian horror movies. So I'd like to go through this list. But bad news, our list of films that we need to catch up is growing, and it's growing by the day. So we got to get to the point where let's monetize this so we can make our jobs watching films all day, because it's the only way we're going to ever catch up.